Siberia, dead of night. Outside the cab, it's 50 degrees Celsius. Cold so intense that a bare hand sticks to metal and your breath freezes around your neck. Most people think a truck driver simply parks the truck, climbs into a sleeping bag, and rests peacefully until sunrise. But that's not how it works. In reality, he sleeps inside a metal box where ice forms on the windows and the engine idles all night long. Because if he shuts it off, in just 20 minutes it will be just as cold inside the cab as it is outside. The road is empty for 200 kilometers in every direction. The diesel fuel in the tank thickens into a gel. The battery loses half its power in this brutal cold. And the deadliest killer inside this cab has no color, no smell, and it can kill a person before they even realize they're falling asleep forever. Today, we'll follow a journey like this from beginning to end, from loading the truck at sunset to seeing the city lights at dawn. And you'll discover that the most dangerous part of this night isn't the cold you imagine. When we hear Siberia, 50 degrees Celsius, we picture someone shivering and blowing warm air into their hands. But the real tragedy lies much deeper. Why does an experienced driver never turn off the engine overnight? And why did ignoring that rule once cost someone their life? People on the internet spread dangerous advice faster than the cold itself. How does extreme cold trick the human brain into no longer realizing it's freezing to death? And what does a driver do if the engine dies in the middle of the taiga, with the nearest settlement 200 kilometers away? We'll answer all of these questions step by step as the night unfolds. Let's begin. But before we set off, if you're fascinated by stories of how people survive in places where the night itself becomes an enemy, be sure to follow our channel so you won't miss the next journey. Back to the cab. Winter days here are incredibly short, as if someone turns off the lights halfway through a work shift. As evening falls, our driver already understands one crucial fact. He won't reach the nearest city tonight. More than 200 kilometers of deserted highway still lie ahead, and the sun has already disappeared behind the Siberian taiga. That means he'll have to spend the night right here on the road, inside the cab. And from this moment, the countdown begins. But it isn't counting the distance, it's counting the falling temperature. At sunset, it's a relatively bearable 28 degrees Celsius, and the air is still almost tolerable. But during the coldest hour just before dawn, the temperature will plunge to 50 degrees Celsius. And here lies the most important truth of all. You cannot outrun the cold by waiting. A truck driver crossing a scorching desert loads up at sunrise to cover the most critical miles before midday, taking advantage of the brief cool window. A Siberian driver has no such window. It is cold, 24 hours a day, and the deepest cold always comes in the middle of the night. That's why his battle isn't about arriving on time, it's about surviving until morning. And survival isn't won through strength or heroics. It's won through planning and preparation. Everything starts long before darkness falls, while his hands still work without freezing. Before night fully sets in, the driver walks all the way around the truck, checking things a rookie wouldn't even think about. First comes the fuel system. The fuel lines are wrapped in expanded polyethylene insulation. The fine fuel filter is fitted with an electric heater. Even the fuel tank is covered with a layer of industrial felt insulation. It may look like unnecessary extra work, but these small details determine whether the truck starts in the morning or stays stranded forever. Next comes the fuel itself. Remote fuel stations don't always carry true winter diesel. An experienced driver already knows the cloud point of his fuel, the temperature at which it begins to thicken, and he always carries fuel rated for temperatures far colder than he expects to face. Then comes the battery. It's the truck's heart, and in extreme cold it can lose power at twice the normal rate. Finally, there's the piece of equipment that makes all the other preparations worthwhile, the auxiliary diesel heater. It's a compact box, about the size of a shoebox, mounted beneath the cab. We'll talk about it in detail later, because it's the one device that separates a peaceful night from a desperate fight for survival. There's one more precaution we'll come back to at the end, more important than any machine. The driver isn't alone on this highway. Somewhere along the same route, another truck is traveling, only a few dozen minutes behind or ahead, staying in radio contact. No one drives into the Siberian taiga alone at night. It may seem like a small precaution, but by dawn, that single decision could mean the difference between life and death. The truck has been inspected. As the sun disappears, the thermometer continues to fall. While the cab is still warm, while the engine is still humming smoothly, it feels as if everything is under control. But the night has only just begun. And with darkness comes the first trap. It's already creeping silently toward the fuel tank. By 8 p.m., the outside temperature has dropped to 35 degrees Celsius, and it's still falling. The headlights carve only a narrow tunnel through the darkness, revealing swirling snow and the endless black wall of forest on either side of the road. This is where the first real lesson in physics begins. Not inside the cab, but inside the fuel lines running beneath the chassis. Diesel may look like an ordinary liquid, but diesel isn't just a simple liquid. It actually contains dissolved paraffins, the same waxy substances used to make candles. When it's warm, they're invisible. But as the temperature drops, those paraffins begin to crystallize, turning the once free-flowing fuel into a thick, cloudy gel. Summer diesel starts to cloud at around 5 degrees Celsius. Winter diesel remains usable down to roughly 25 degrees Celsius. Only Arctic-grade diesel stays fluid at 50 degrees Celsius and even lower. The problem is that once the fuel thickens, it clogs the fuel filter with a wax-like paste. The fuel pump can no longer push diesel to the engine. The engine stalls not because the tank is empty, but because no fuel can reach it. And it can happen with a completely full tank. This problem has inspired countless dangerous solutions. One popular piece of folk wisdom says to pour various homemade liquids into the tank to lower the fuel's freezing point. Sometimes the engine runs again for a few hours, but those chemicals often damage the fuel system. Instead of surviving the night, the driver ends up with an expensive repair and a dead truck in the middle of nowhere. Another myth says to warm the engine thoroughly before shutting it off, believing the heat will last until morning. It won't. The fuel inside the narrow lines and filter cools much faster than the heavy cast iron engine block. Within an hour, the illusion disappears. The most dangerous mistake of all is trying to heat the fuel tank with an open flame. Diesel vapors can ignite instantly. Attempts like these have often ended with severe burns or far worse. The real solution is the same as everything else on this journey. Not a heroic last-minute trick. Preparation. Special anti-gel additives keep paraffin crystals from clumping together. An insulated fuel tank and a heated fuel filter keep the diesel flowing. The driver who prepared everything during daylight simply keeps driving, barely thinking about paraffin at all. The one who trusted luck is standing on the roadside at midnight with a flashlight, trying to warm frozen fuel lines using methods best left unmentioned. Our driver prepared properly. The engine keeps running without a problem. But as the night grows colder, another question becomes impossible to ignore. If it's this cold, why not simply shut off the engine, crawl into a warm sleeping bag, and wait until morning? By 11 p.m., the thermometer reads 40 degrees Celsius. The driver pulls into a wide roadside turnout, parks the truck facing into the wind, and prepares to spend the night. And this is where the biggest misconception traps inexperienced drivers. The solution seems obvious. Turn off the engine, climb into a warm sleeping bag, go to sleep. Why waste diesel by letting the engine idle all night? Because the truck cab stops being a shelter almost immediately. Its walls, floor, and roof were designed for moderate climates. They have only basic insulation against noise and light cold. At 40 degrees Celsius, that insulation is almost useless. The moment the engine is shut down, the countdown begins. Within the first 30 minutes, the temperature inside the cab can drop by 15 to 20 degrees. After about an hour, the interior is only a few degrees warmer than the air outside. At that point, the human body loses heat faster than it can produce it. Falling asleep without heat may mean never waking up again. That's why a running engine here isn't a luxury. It's a source of life-saving heat. Part of the engine's cooling system transfers warmth into the cab, keeping the temperature above freezing. For decades, Siberian truck drivers almost never shut off their diesel engines during winter nights. The engines idled quietly for hours, burning only a small amount of fuel. It was the only reliable way to stay alive and to keep the engine from freezing solid. To reduce heat loss, drivers would cover the radiator grille with cardboard or canvas and insulate the oil pan and exposed pipes. The truck itself became both shelter and heater. But keeping a large diesel engine running all night comes at a cost. Extra fuel consumption, accelerated wear on pistons and cylinders that idle for hours without carrying a load. And that's where the real breakthrough arrived. The device, this entire system, was designed around an auxiliary diesel heater, a compact unit mounted beneath the cab. that first appeared on many trucks during the 1990s. It provides heat all night long without having to keep the main engine running. The driver presses a single button, and within minutes, warm, dry air begins flowing from the vents. The heater draws fuel directly from the truck's tank, yet it consumes about 10 times less fuel than an engine idling all night. With a healthy battery, it can keep the cab warm for 8 to 10 hours. This small device protects the main engine and keeps the person inside alive. The driver who prepares properly can spend even the coldest night in warmth and relative comfort. The one who thinks he can simply shut off the engine and take a nap is making a potentially fatal mistake. But some people believe the standard equipment isn't enough. Their improvised solutions often become more dangerous than the cold itself. Let's look at those next. It's uksi, no la, m. Outside, the temperature has fallen to 45 degrees Celsius. When the cold becomes almost unbearable and people lose faith in their preparations, they begin reaching for desperate solutions. And that's when improvisation becomes more dangerous than nature itself. In northern regions, there have been cases where drivers brought red-hot bricks or heated stones into the cab on a metal tray after warming them over a fire. The stones release heat slowly as they cool, but they can also release combustion gases, including carbon monoxide. Others use household gas cylinders with propane burners or portable camping stoves. A particularly dangerous myth claims that catalytic gas heaters are safe because they produce no open flame. It's true they have no visible flame, but the oxidation process is silent. It still consumes oxygen, and it still produces carbon monoxide. That's what makes this mistake so deadly. Carbon monoxide has no color and no odor. It binds to the hemoglobin in human blood over 200 times more readily than oxygen. A person slowly suffocates from the inside without ever feeling short of breath. Inside a tightly sealed truck cab with little ventilation, gas from a burner can easily build up to dangerous levels overnight. The cruelest part is that while asleep, the body's awareness is greatly reduced. There is no warning. The driver simply never wakes up. Every year, statistics record new tragedies. Someone falls asleep with a gas heater running and dies from carbon monoxide poisoning without ever realizing they were in danger. And that's only one of several deadly misconceptions. Some people suggest plugging a household electric heater into the truck using a power inverter. The problem is simple. Its power consumption is so high that it can drain the battery in less than half an hour, leaving the driver with no heat and no way to restart the truck. Others think the answer is simply wearing the thickest winter clothing and sleeping inside it. But the body overheats, begins to sweat, and moisture builds up inside the sleeping bag. As temperatures continue to fall, that damp fabric rapidly pulls heat away from the body. What once felt warm suddenly becomes dangerously cold. Some believe having a drink before bed will help. Alcohol does create a feeling of warmth by widening blood vessels, but that sensation is an illusion. In reality, it accelerates heat loss, causing the body to cool even faster. The conclusion is simple. The only dependable solution is not a desperate homemade invention. It's a factory-designed auxiliary heater with a sealed combustion chamber and an exhaust system that vents combustion gases safely outside the cab. But what happens if that system fails? What if it stops working in the middle of the night? The very system the driver trusted with his life. Now imagine the worst possible moment. It's nelia, nolla, m, the coldest hour before dawn. Outside, it's 50 degrees Celsius. Sleep is at its strongest. And suddenly, the heater shuts down. The battery is dead. The nearest inhabited settlement is 200 kilometers away. From this moment on, time is measured not in hours, but in minutes. The cab immediately stops being a shelter. Without heat, the temperature inside falls so quickly that every minute matters. And this is where the true cruelty of extreme cold reveals itself. To protect vital organs, the body narrows its blood vessels, pulling warm blood away from the skin and limbs toward the heart and other essential organs. This strategy keeps a person alive, but only for a limited time. As the body's core temperature continues to fall, every system begins slowing down, including the brain. Drowsiness sets in. Thoughts become confused. Movements lose precision. And worst of all, judgment disappears. The freezing person may honestly believe they're simply tired. They decide to lie down just for 1 minute, and that minute becomes the last one. Extreme cold kills by deception. It doesn't just shut down the body. It shuts down the ability to recognize that it's time to fight for survival. That's why an experienced driver never relies on instinct. He follows The biggest mistake at this point is to panic. Many people immediately start moving around frantically, trying to warm themselves through activity or attempting to repair the truck at any cost. But that only burns precious oxygen and energy. It also causes sweating, and once that moisture cools, the body loses heat even faster. The correct response is almost the opposite. Stay inside the cab. Climb into the sleeping bag. Wrap yourself in an aluminized emergency blanket that reflects your own body heat back toward you. Then take out the emergency supplies that every well-prepared driver keeps within easy reach. Candles, matches, solid fuel tablets, high-calorie energy bars, and a thermos filled with hot tea. A single candle produces only about 50 watts of heat. That isn't much. But inside a small, insulated space lined with a reflective emergency blanket, even that small amount of warmth becomes noticeable. The candle should always be placed in a stable camping lantern or candle holder, well away from anything flammable. Never under homemade covers or improvised heaters that can easily tip over and start a fire. Physical activity should be saved for one thing only: reaching for the radio. And this is where the true foundation of the entire journey becomes clear. Why is a radio more important than a GPS? Why do trucks travel in pairs during severe cold, checking in with each other every few minutes? The answer is simple. A single person stranded in the Siberian taiga at 50 degrees Celsius has almost no chance of surviving alone. Two drivers, however, can watch over one another. This unwritten rule was written through the mistakes and deaths of those who came before. Now it will decide whether our driver lives to see sunrise. He does exactly what he's supposed to do. He doesn't rush outside into the darkness to work under the hood, where bare skin would stick to frozen metal within moments. Instead, he climbs into his sleeping bag, wraps himself in the emergency blanket, picks up the radio, and calmly reports his location by kilometer marker. A fellow driver traveling the same route a short distance behind notices that the scheduled radio check never comes. He immediately turns around. Those few silent minutes over the radio become the difference between arriving in time and arriving too late. In Siberia, survival isn't determined by strength or by luck. It's determined by a set of rules. Rules that were paid for with someone's life long ago. The first rule: during dangerous winter conditions, trucks travel in pairs and maintain constant radio contact. If one driver fails to respond, the other still has a chance to reach them in time. The second rule: carry extra fuel, extra water, and extra heating capacity. During daylight, those reserves may seem excessive, but on a night like this, there is no such thing as enough. The third rule: never leave the planned route or drive blindly into a blizzard. In the Siberian taiga, it's possible to become hopelessly lost just a few kilometers from the highway. And the fourth, and perhaps most important rule: the most dangerous hours are not the time for heroics. They are the time to stay warm, stay calm, and stay alive. When the second driver finally reaches the disabled truck, they don't immediately begin repairing it in the freezing dawn. First, they warm the stranded driver inside the heated cab. They give him hot tea. They let his body recover. Only after the eastern sky begins to brighten and the worst of the cold starts to ease do they begin working on the engine. And by the time the lights of the city finally appear on the horizon, both drivers understand why they made it through the night. Not because they were stronger than the Siberian winter, but because they understood its rules and never broke a single one. We often think of a truck as nothing more than steel on wheels, following a road through the taiga, a simple line on a map. But tonight proves otherwise. Every hour after sunset is either time gained or time lost. Every anti-gel additive poured into the fuel tank is one breakdown postponed. Every breath of warm air from the heater beneath the cab delays disaster just a little longer. And nearly every popular cold weather trick ultimately turns out to be nothing more than a faster way to die. The most remarkable truth is that technology is often weaker than the human being who uses it. At 50 degrees Celsius, a battery loses much of its power. Diesel thickens into jelly. Bare metal becomes dangerous to touch. Yet the driver keeps going. Not because he's tougher than the machine, but because he knows how to drive. He knows how to plan, how to wait, how to conserve resources. and how to learn from those who traveled this road before him. Extreme cold never forgives mistakes, but an understanding of physics, careful preparation, and disciplined planning can transform what seems like a deadly journey into an ordinary day's work. And whether a driver is fighting through a frozen Siberian night or crossing a scorching desert thousands of kilometers away, survival follows the same principle everywhere. Not heroism, a system. So, the next time you walk into a warm store and pick up something that traveled from far away, remember this. At some point along its journey, it may have crossed an icy highway in the middle of a Siberian night. Someone drove that road slowly, following the rules, with a radio in one hand and warmth at their back, so that an ordinary package could safely reach the shelf. The true cost of logistics isn't measured only in kilometers traveled or liters of fuel consumed. It's measured in human endurance. If you enjoyed this look into a hidden world where everyday work hangs on the edge of the laws of physics, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next journey. And in the comments, tell us, what survival methods do you know for enduring extreme cold? We'll be back soon with more stories of how people survive in places where nature itself is their greatest enemy. See you in the next video.